Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, you want to know whenever we're discussing, or I get the pleasure of discussing new gun laws with people around the country, the most common question that we receive is, hey, who the hell drafted that? Who was the moron or the idiot that thought that that would be a good idea? And it is very apparent to anyone that even has a rudimentary understanding of the functionality of firearms that literally every gun law is written by a person who has no clue what they're talking about. Today we're going to get to introduce you to a person that we haven't had a chance to talk a lot about, but when it comes to people who have no clue what they're talking about, well, Rashida Tlaib certainly is at near the top of that list. She has come up with a piece of gun legislation which she has proposed to great fanfare with a press release on it. And so we think we might want to spend a few minutes and kind of break it all down and help you guys all understand. So today, let's spend a few minutes and talk about when gun laws are proposed by idiots. Okay, so the issue we're talking about today is some legislation proposed by a Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib out of Michigan. But before we get too far down that road, I do want to put an official statement on the record here because this law does have to do with safe storage of firearms. And as you know, we preach all the time here that we are the home of the lawful and responsible gun owner. Lawful and responsible gun ownership obviously includes safe storage. It is a huge and critical component of true responsible gun ownership, okay? However, for those who favor civilian disarmament, what I believe they fail to take into account, but we in the Second Amendment community must, is we have to take into account a person's individual circumstances. So, do I believe that the safe storage requirements might be mildly different for a home that has 4 children all under the age of 10 running around the house all the time versus a 55-year-old single woman living in a rough part of town in a condominium all by herself? Yes, I believe that those individual circumstances probably permit and or require different types of storage. And ultimately, it is up to the individual gun owner. Now, in Washington State, we have safe storage laws. It does not mandate how you store the gun, but it does say, hey, if you fail to securely store it and bad things happen, you can be on the hook for it. Well, Rashida Tlaib, who has spent her entire time in the United States Congress railing against anything remotely close to American. So she has been railing against capitalism, democracy, the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. She has railed against every little aspect of American culture. In fact, her hate for the United States is equaled only by her hate for the state of Israel. Well, along comes Congressperson Tlaib, who now has proposed a House bill which would amend 18 USC section 922 subsection Z. I know many of you probably don't realize what this law is, but for any of you, and I do mean any of you anywhere in the country, if you have purchased a handgun in the last 10 years or more, it always, and I do mean always, comes with a safety lock, okay? No matter who the manufacturer is. So whether you're buying a low-end bargain basement firearm or a really high-end firearm, when we're talking about handguns in the United States, they are all being sold to you with a trigger lock. Now, what you do with the trigger lock, of course, is your own prerogative. Now, according to Congressperson Tlaib, there are 4.6 million children right now living in a home in the United States with an unsecured firearm. Now, she cites no data or statistics to prove any of that. She also claims that firearm deaths is the leading cause of deaths amongst young people. That is actually a disproven statistic as well. Now, I'm not going to suggest that it's not high on the list. It is high on the list. But your more common accidents are by far a much higher cause of death amongst young people, as is drug overdoses. Now, Congressperson Tlaib also states that there has been significant gun violence in her district, which I have no doubt, but she has not connected the dots between that and unsecured storage or unsafe storage of firearms. What Congressperson Tlaib's legislation would take this statute right here, 18 USC 922 subsection Z, which reads as follows. Except as provided under paragraph 2, it shall be unlawful for any licensed importer, licensed manufacturer, or licensed dealer to sell, deliver, or transfer any handgun to any person other than the person licensed under this chapter, unless the transferee is provided with a secure gun storage or safety device as defined in this section for that handgun. And in a very simple piece of legislation, what Congressperson Tlaib wants to do is strike the word handgun from the statute and replace it with firearm, which means that now every manufacturer, dealer of any firearm in the United States would have to sell that device with a trigger lock. Now, a cursory inspection of accidental discharges, unattended firearms, and things like that resulting in death and injury will unfortunately yield you lots of results, okay? And yes, there is a problem with this, okay? There is a problem with this, and it is a problem that is easily solvable by more lawful and responsible gun ownership. However, when you go and you start looking into the details of all of these horrific incidents, every single one of them involves a handgun, okay? There is no instance, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened, okay? But there are not instances of unattended shotguns, rifles, and so forth being left around, and that being ultimately leading to those types of injury. So what Congresswoman Tlaib is doing with the Safe Storage Saves Lives Act is doing nothing more than virtue signaling. You see, she has not connected any dots to the onslaught of gun violence as it relates to unsecured storage of firearms. And let us remember that the United States Department of Justice's own statistics state that 88.8% of all individuals who commit firearm-related crimes are in fact unlawfully possessing the firearm at the time that the crime is committed. That's not my statistics. That's not my opinion. That's the United States Department of Justice's own statistics. Now, we know that apparently in Philadelphia and Jersey, there are these quasi-ice cream trucks that used to drive around the neighborhood dropping off assault weapons to anybody, according to our president. But we do know, and we know this with absolute certainty, that a very, very large majority of all gun crimes are committed by people who are unlawfully possessing firearms, which means they are committed by people who unlawfully obtain the firearms. Now, how many of your black market gun dealers in the alleys of America's biggest cities, or those that are just driving around in vans, dropping them off like President Biden, are also going to be dropping off gun safety and lock storage devices? And so while Congressperson Tlaib will decry that she was doing everything in her power to stop gun violence, and those on the radical right stopped her from saving lives, what she has done is written a piece of legislation which is going to go nowhere, does nothing more than is virtue signaling, and does absolutely nothing to address the true problems in this country. That is the result of when gun laws are proposed by idiots. Listen, you may have more questions about the Safe Storage Saves Lives Act or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights. You guys should know how to contact Washington Gun Law by now, but if you don't, that's okay. That information is down there in the description box. In the meantime, I do want all of you to remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching, and stay safe.